What is up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to do an entire workflow breakdown on the SP404 Mark II. This is exactly how I'm making beats at the moment, end-to-end process. I'll talk a little bit about recording now, but I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. It's basically going to be everything that I do inside the unit. So there's quite a big sort of obsession with other people's workflows, I think, on the internet, especially with doorless setups. I think people are really interested to know how other people work. And for people looking at getting the Mark II as well, I think it's really important, these kinds of videos, because it gives you a real understanding of how this unit works and how beats are made on it. Just before I start, guys, don't forget to check out all the links in the descriptions. I will be featuring drums from my packs in this video. They're all available in the links below. Go check those out. It keeps me funded doing what I'm doing here. I really would appreciate it. So first of all, you have access to 16 projects on an SP404 Mark II. You can access those with Shift and Project, and you can choose which one you want to be working in. You can see here I'm in 13 because that's flashing, so I'll just go ahead and select that anyway. Once you're inside a project, you have access to these 10 banks, so 2x5 buttons there, AF, BG, CH, DI, EJ, and each one of those has 16 slots for samples, 1 to 16 here. So basically, even though it's called a project, you can actually have multiple projects inside each project. I think that's really important to understand. And the way I'm structuring things at the moment is per project, I tend to have about 5 beats. So because there's 5 buttons here, this is the way I've been working. A, B, C, D, and E, they're going to be sample chops, 1 for each project. And then F, G, H, I, J, they're going to be all the drums to complement that project. So you see here, because A and F are the same button, I basically have A for the chops, F for the drums, and any other little bits that I want as well, like rap vocal stabs, foley's, sub notes. They're all in F as well. They'll all be in with the drums as well. So the reason I've switched to this is because I've actually started pretty much exclusively now chopping samples that are 4 bars in length. That gives you 16 equal chops, and for me this is a system which has been working really well for me. I've been creating a lot of beats using this method. So I'll show you this example here in slot A. And I'll have to leave a little break so I don't get the copyright police on me. So that's the first 2 bars, and then the second 2. So I've got those 4 bars laid out, and then what I can start to do is pick a pattern using that tempo. And the way that I sort of choose a tempo is by using the repitching functions in the SP. So this obviously isn't what the original sample sounds like. What I do is I go into pitch and speed, and I don't want to go into too much detail about this particular area, but basically I use the repitching and the time stretching to find a tempo that I want to play around with. So, you know, usually somewhere between sort of 80 and 90 for hip hop is a good sort of BPM, so that's where I tend to aim around. You can see here I've got this pitched up 3 semitones, and I'm around about 82 BPM. So now I can start picking up a pattern, rearranging these, and finding a melody. So you can hear there, that was just me jamming, random ideas, but because I'm keeping it in time, most of those chops kind of work. So I'll do that and find a pattern that I like. Really enjoy playing around with this side of things. This is probably my favorite part about making a beat, is trying to find these patterns. So that's the chops side of things. That's how they're laid out. That's how I come up with an idea for a pattern. Let's go into the drums now. So in F, and what I tend to do here is use lanes, I like to call them. So we've got 4 lanes here. You could do them vertically if you wanted. You can do them horizontally, X or Y axis. It's completely up to you, but this is the way that I work with them. So I use vertical lanes or columns, and basically 1 to 13 I'll import kicks, 2 to 14 I'll import snares, 3 to 15 I import hi-hats. You can check out my previous video about why I've started doing this. It's basically just to give me more options when I'm making a beat. And then in the final column here, 4, 8, 12 and 16, that gives me some room to add stuff like bass notes, rap vocal stabs, as I was mentioning earlier. It also means that I can resample these sounds and add effects if I want to. So if I had a snare here, say I wanted a different sound on that, so I added isolator, and then I can resample that. to one of these pads, which is free. And you can hear there, I've got room to do that and play around with the effects and do what I want to do with that. So that's the samples and the drums decided for the project. So once all that's in place, I can then go ahead and go into the pattern sequencer. Now the SP404 Mark II has got a pretty decent pattern sequencer. It's not as good as, say, an MPC or a DAW, but it can definitely get the job done. So you go into pattern select, and again, you get 10 banks, A to J, and you can fill those with as many patterns as you want. Because I'm working in A and F for this particular project, this first beat, I'll use A for all the patterns for it. I tend to find that I don't need any more than 16 patterns, so 1 bank per project is more than enough, really. So basically what I'll start doing is sketching out ideas here, and a lot of the time I will actually start with drums. Now, I will have already decided what the pattern is going to be, but I find it easier to lay the drums down first and then put those chops over the top. I don't really like working to a metronome, so getting those drums in at the right tempo that I've already decided, that's the way that I go about things. I prefer to do it that way. So you can hear here, I've got some drums in there, and they'll be from one of my packs, either Lo-Fi Drums Volume 4 or 5 I've been working with for these particular beats. So I've got that in there, and then I can start building things up. I like to save that just in case I want to use that for a variation or something like that. And then when I get serious about wanting to create actual finished kind of sequences, I drop down to 9, and 9 onwards is kind of like where things are starting to happen. So 1 to 8 for me really is just messing around, trying to get things in place. It gives me space to be able to do certain things like, I don't know, say if I wanted to make a pattern and then make a pattern without the hi-hats, I could do that up here. And then when I'm ready to use that with some chops, I could move it down to here and lay some chops over the top. So I basically have like 2 sets of banks here. 1 to 8 for my ideas and sketching things out, and then 9 to 16 for my kind of finished sequences. And I'll do that on each bank. You can see here 1 to 4 is occupied with ideas, and then 9, 10 and 11 on this particular project, they're the ideas that I've laid down. Same here with C, exactly the same layout on C, even though it's a different beat. D is the same, but I've only done 9 and 10 so far as finished ones. And then E to J as well, you can see there, just 3 ideas and 2 messing around. So that's kind of how I've started structuring things with my patterns. And then obviously I can just go ahead and play these patterns. So there is a way on the SP404 Mark II that you can map out all the patterns and play them in whatever order that you want them to play in. I don't tend to do that. I quite like to jam my patterns as I'm playing them, so I'll know which ones are which, and then I usually record my beats out live, so I'll just jam them really. You can put a really stiff structure in if you wanted to, which probably would make things a little bit easier, but I like to play things out live, but I'll talk about that more in a minute now when I'm talking about the effects. So once those patterns are down, I go into effects. Now on the SP404 Mark II, you have 4 available buses. Bus 1 and 2 you can assign samples to. Bus 3 and 4 are like master buses. You just send the full signal through them basically. You can have those off if you want. You can have them with 2 different ones, 2 different effects. You can have them with 1 effect and leave 1 blank. Really is up to you how you use them. So here's the diagram of how things are working here and how I set things up. Again, I have a full video about how I set up my buses at the moment, so go ahead and check that out. I think it should be up on this corner. Maybe it's that one, not really sure. It's hard to tell when you're on the camera. I think it'll be this one. But yeah, I lay everything out in the same way on every project now, and it just means that I don't need to think about bus effects at all. The main thing to note is that I double up on compressors on 3 and 4. It just really beefs things up for me, and I really like the sound of it. So that's the way that bus 3 and 4 are on all my beats, just 2 compressors. And I can show you the difference because you can mute bus 3 and 4 easily. So check out the difference. Just really brings things to life and adds a lot of energy, I feel, that mix, so I really like that. Then basically all my samples are assigned to bus 1 and I can add an effect on those, and then bus 2 I use to jam live effects with. So I'll give you a quick example. Like I say, I've already done a video about this, but I'll do you a quick example. So let's say, for example, on A, all these chops, I'm going to add an effect on those on bus 1. So I'll go to bus 1, MFX, and I'm going to add some vinyl sim. So this is going to be quite subtle. You can hear that there's a little bit of a lo-fi sound to it. Depending on what the beat is, that really depends on what effect I'll add. So I might add Crusher instead, for example. So I've got Crusher assigned up here on my Resonate button. You can hear it adding that kind of SP404 ring to it, which is really, really nice. So basically, I just choose between a few of my favorite effects for the sample chops. If I want to add drums to those, I can do. I just assign it to bus 1, but I tend to keep my drums just vanilla out the box and then do most of the work on the sample to make it lo-fi. I like my drums to punch through, so I don't really like to mess around with the effects too much on the drums. So I rarely have effects assigned to the drums, but sometimes I do. It depends how I'm feeling basically on that particular beat. So yeah, like I say, bus 2 then gives me the space to be able to jam effects, so I can do stuff like this. And as I'm recording out, I'll play around with those and add some live effects, add some spice to the beats, make them sound really nice, and it's quite fun as well, jamming along with the effects like that. So as I'm recording out, I'll play around with the patterns, I'll choose different patterns. The patterns do automatically queue up on the Mark II, so if I press 1 and start it, I can press the next one, say, you know, whenever I want, and that will automatically play after it. So you can see there it cues it automatically and then it plays it straight after. So I like jamming with those jamming the live effects and creating a beat like that. I really like that kind of hands-on approach to recording a track when you're happy with all the sequences that you've built. So that has been my entire workflow for the past, I would say, month now. Every single time I'll chop a sample into 16s, get the tempo right, play around with the pattern, get the idea into pattern mode, layer some drums, stick to that bus setup that I talked about with the effects, make as many patterns and variations that I want, and jam that out with some effects. That is essentially my workflow. I mean, I've just explained the whole video that I told you in about 20 seconds there, but you know, hopefully this was useful, guys. I just wanted to show you this. Like I said at the start of the video, I know people are very keen to see other people's workflows, particularly those of you that are looking to get this device. I've spent a lot of time on SP devices now, from the 404 SX onwards. You know, I've spent so many hours, so this workflow to me is just completely natural now. I love it. I think it's really simple. I know it looks a bit overwhelming when you're a beginner, but honestly, it doesn't take long to get into a groove, into a flow. And I just want to leave you by saying, don't necessarily completely copy this workflow. This is just something that works for me. We're all different and we all find creativity in different ways. So really spend the time working on something that works for you rather than copying exactly what I do. If you do want to copy what I do and it works for you, that's great. Go ahead and do that. But I really recommend trying to find your own way and trying to find your own workflow. So that's it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you all again in another video very, very soon.